You just marked a vampire king. The words were spoken softly, almost gently, yet they cut through the noise of the crowded coffee shop like a blade. Emily Carter froze, her hand still trembling around the empty paper cup as dark coffee dripped slowly from the stranger's coat onto the polished wooden floor. For a moment, no one moved. The hiss of the espresso machine faded into nothing. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the music seemed to stop breathing. Emily's heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. She had messed up. Again. Another mistake. Another angry customer. Another complaint that could cost her the job she desperately needed. She grabbed a stack of napkins, her fingers shaking as she stepped closer. "I am so sorry," she said, her voice barely steady, eyes fixed on the stain spreading across his sleeve. "I did not mean to. I will clean it, I promise." But the man did not step back. He did not react the way people usually did. He did not curse, did not sigh, did not even look annoyed. Instead, he watched her. Calm. Still. Unreadable. Then he smiled. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. Emily hesitated, something cold brushing against her skin though the shop was warm. Up close, the man did not look ordinary. His features were too precise, too perfect, like something carved rather than born. His skin was pale, not sickly but unnatural, as if it had never known sunlight. And his eyes, they were not just dark. They were deep, endless, like looking into a night sky with no stars. "It is just coffee," she whispered, trying to steady herself, forcing a nervous laugh. "I can pay for the cleaning." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she had said something far more interesting than an apology. "Coffee does not do this," he replied quietly. Emily blinked. "Do what?" she asked. That was when she felt it. A sharp sting across her palm. She looked down. A thin cut she did not remember getting had opened across her skin, and a single drop of blood slid slowly down her hand. It fell. Time seemed to stretch as the drop touched the back of his hand. The air shifted instantly. Cold. Rushed through the room like an invisible storm. The lights flickered once. Twice. Then steadied. No one else seemed to notice. No one except him. His smile faded, not into anger, but into something far more dangerous. Recognition. His gaze locked onto her hand, then back to her face, and for the first time, Emily saw something flicker in those endless eyes. Not warmth. Not kindness. Something ancient. Something that should not have been there. "You should not be able to do that," he said under his breath. Emily's chest tightened. "Do what?" she asked again, her voice smaller now. He took a single step closer. Close enough that she could feel the unnatural chill radiating from him. Close enough that the world beyond him seemed to disappear. And then he said it. "You just marked a vampire king." Emily's breath caught as the words settled into her chest like ice. A vampire king. Her mind rejected it instantly. That was not possible. That was not real. This was a coffee shop on a busy street in downtown Seattle. Not a story, not a nightmare, not whatever this was turning into. "That is not funny," she said, forcing a weak laugh, taking a step back, but her heel caught against the edge of the counter. The man moved before she could fall. One hand closed around her wrist. Firm. Precise. Not rough, but unyielding. The moment his skin touched hers, a sharp heat surged through her arm. Emily gasped. The mark on her palm flared, a faint golden pattern spreading like fire beneath her skin. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to stop her. "Do not move," he said quietly. His voice was not loud, yet it carried a weight that pressed down on the entire room. Emily froze. Not because she wanted to, but because something in his tone made resistance feel impossible. Around them, subtle shifts began to unfold. A man near the window stood up too quickly, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. A woman dropped her phone. Near the door, two figures who had been sitting silently now rose at the same time, their movements too synchronized, too controlled. They were watching. Not casually. Intently. Emily's pulse quickened. "You are scaring me," she whispered. The man's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, but the intensity did not leave. "You should be afraid," he replied. Then he released her wrist. Emily stumbled back, clutching her hand to her chest. The burning sensation did not fade. It grew. The faint pattern was clearer now. Intricate lines, curling into a symbol that felt ancient and wrong. like something that did not belong in her world. "What did you do to me?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Before he could answer, another voice cut through the tension. "My lord." Emily turned. One of the figures from the door had approached. Tall, dressed in a dark coat despite the warm shop. His posture was rigid, his eyes flicking briefly toward Emily before lowering in respect. "We need to leave. Now, my lord." The words echoed in Emily's mind. She looked back at the man in front of her. He had not denied it. He had not laughed. He simply stood there, watching her as if the entire world had narrowed down to this moment. "Not yet," he said calmly. The other man stiffened. "With respect, the mark has already formed. If the others sense it, they will come." "Others?" Emily's stomach dropped. "What others?" she asked, but no one answered her. The man in front of her stepped closer again, slower this time, as if approaching something fragile. "What is your name?" he asked. The question felt out of place. Too normal. Too simple for everything happening around her. "Emily," she said after a moment. "Emily Carter." He repeated it softly, as if testing how it sounded. "Emily." Something unreadable crossed his expression. Then he looked down at her hand. The mark pulsed once. Bright. Alive. His jaw tightened. "This should not have happened," he murmured. "Not like this." Emily shook her head, panic rising. "You keep saying things like that, but you are not explaining anything." Her voice cracked. "I need to go home." The moment the words left her mouth, the atmosphere shifted again. The man behind him took a step forward. "She cannot leave," he said sharply. "Not with that mark. You know the law." "Law. Mark. Vampire King." The words collided in Emily's mind, refusing to make sense. "I am not going anywhere with you," she said, backing toward the counter, her eyes darting toward the exit. It was only 20 feet away. She could make it. She had to. But when she tried to move, she realized something was wrong. The space between her and the door felt longer than it should. The air heavier, as if something invisible stood in her way. "Emily," the man said again, and this time his voice was different. Not cold, not distant, steady, certain. "Listen to me carefully. From this moment on, you are no longer invisible to my world." He held her gaze, and for the first time, she saw it clearly. Not just power, not just danger, responsibility, ancient and absolute. "And my world," he continued quietly, "does not let something like you walk away." Emily did not move. The air felt too thick to breathe, too heavy to push through, as if the space around her had turned into something alive and watchful. Her fingers tightened around her palm where the mark burned, each pulse of light sending a sharp wave of heat through her hand and up her arm. She shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "No, this is not real. This is not happening." The man watched her carefully, his expression unreadable, but there was something different now. Not just control, not just power, a quiet tension beneath it, like something he could not fully contain. "It is real," he said, "and it has already begun." Emily took another step back until her shoulders brushed against the counter. The familiar edge grounded her for half a second. Coffee shop, work, normal life. She clung to it. "Then explain it," she said, her voice rising despite herself. "Explain why my hand looks like this. Explain why everyone is staring like I did something wrong. Explain why you keep talking like I belong to you." A flicker crossed his face at that last word. Not anger, not offense, something closer to recognition. "You do not belong to me," he said quietly. "Not yet." The words made her stomach twist. "That is not better," she snapped. Before he could respond, the man behind him stepped forward again, urgency breaking through his controlled posture. "My lord, we are out of time." His eyes shifted toward the windows. Emily followed his gaze. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just reflections, movement, people walking outside. Then she noticed it. Figures, standing too still, watching the shop from across the street. 1, 2, then more. They were not moving like normal pedestrians. They were waiting. "Who are they?" she whispered. The man in front of her did not turn, but his voice dropped lower, colder. The moment the mark appeared, it sent a signal. Emily's breath caught. A signal to who? He finally looked toward the window, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop another degree. "To every creature that understands what it means." The other man spoke again, faster now. "If they confirm it is genuine, they will not wait for permission. They will act." Emily felt her pulse spike. Act how? Silence. No one answered. That was worse than anything they could have said. She turned back toward the door. It was still there. Still only 20 feet away. But now it felt impossible. Like trying to reach something on the other side of a locked world. I am leaving, she said, forcing strength into her voice. I do not care what you are or what you think this is. I did not agree to any of this. She took a step forward. This time, the space resisted harder. A pressure pressed against her chest, invisible but undeniable. She gasped and staggered back, her heart racing. What was that? She demanded. The man stepped closer instantly, his expression sharpening. They are already testing the boundary, he said, seeing if they can reach you. Emily's fear spiked into something sharper. Reach me for what? His gaze locked onto hers. There was no softness now, no hesitation, only truth. To take you, he said. The words landed like a physical blow. Emily shook her head, backing away again. No, I am not part of whatever this is. I am just a barista. I make coffee. That is it. Her voice broke on the last word. The mark on her hand flared brighter, as if reacting to her panic. Pain shot through her palm, forcing a sharp breath from her lips. The man moved again, faster than she could track, stopping just inches away. His hand hovered near hers, but did not touch. Look at me, he said. She did not want to. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to pretend none of this was real. But she looked anyway. His eyes held hers, and for a moment, everything else faded. The fear, the noise, the impossible weight of what he was saying. You are not just anything, he said, his voice steady, absolute. If you were, the mark would not have chosen you. Emily's breath trembled. I did not choose anything, she whispered. His expression darkened slightly. That is exactly why it did. Outside, one of the figures stepped forward. Then another. The stillness broke. Movement rippled across the street like a signal had been given. The man behind him cursed under his breath. They know, he said. The Vampire King did not look away from Emily. Then we are done waiting, he replied. And in that moment, Emily understood something without needing it explained. Whatever came next, she was no longer deciding anything. The world had already decided for her. The first scream came from outside. It cut through the glass like a warning that arrived too late. Emily flinched, her body reacting before her mind could understand. Every instinct told her to run, but there was nowhere to go. The figures across the street were no longer standing still. They moved now, fast and deliberate, crossing the distance toward the coffee shop with unnatural speed. The door burst open. Cold air rushed in, sharp and sudden, carrying with it a presence that made Emily's chest tighten. 3 of them stepped inside. Their eyes scanned the room, not with curiosity, but with purpose. One of them spoke, his voice low and controlled. We felt it. The Vampire King did not turn to face them. He remained where he stood, between them and Emily, as if that position had already been decided long before this moment. You should not have come, he said quietly. The man at the front smiled faintly. It was not a friendly expression. When a blood sovereign mark appears, everyone comes. Emily's stomach dropped at the words. Blood sovereign. The phrase sounded heavier than anything else she had heard so far. Like it carried rules she did not understand and consequences she could not escape. She took a step back, her hand tightening over the burning mark. I did not do anything, she said, her voice shaking. I do not even know what that means. One of the newcomers looked at her, his gaze sharp and assessing. You do not need to understand it, he said. You only need to come with us. The Vampire King moved then. It was not fast in the way humans moved. It was faster than thought. One moment he stood still. The next, he was between Emily and them, his presence expanding, filling the space like a storm about to break. She is not going anywhere, he said. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. The lights dimmed, flickering once as if struggling to stay alive. The other vampires stilled, their expressions tightening. You are claiming her, the first man said, his voice sharpening. In front of witnesses. The Vampire King's eyes glowed faintly, a deep crimson rising beneath the surface. I am protecting what is mine to protect. Emily's breath caught. The words echoed in her chest, confusing and terrifying at the same time. She did not belong to him. She had just said that, but no one here seemed to care what she thought. The tension snapped without warning. One of the vampires lunged forward. Emily did not even see the movement clearly. It was a blur. A shift of air. A sudden pressure that knocked over chairs and sent cups crashing to the floor. The Vampire King intercepted him mid-motion. The impact sounded like something solid breaking, a deep crack that echoed through the shop. They froze for a fraction of a second, locked in place. Then the attacker was thrown backward, slamming into a table hard enough to splinter it. Emily stumbled, her back hitting the counter as chaos erupted around her. Customers screamed. Someone ran for the door. Another dropped to the floor, covering their head. The normal world shattered in seconds. Enough, the Vampire King said. His voice was not loud, but it carried absolute authority. The remaining two vampires hesitated, their eyes flicking between him and Emily. This is not over, the first one said, straightening slowly. If the mark completes, she becomes a target for every house. The Vampire King did not deny it. Then they will learn what happens when they reach for something under my protection. Silence followed. Heavy. Dangerous. The man's gaze lingered on Emily one last time before he stepped back. You cannot shield her forever, he said. The bond will force your hand. Then they were gone. Just like that. The door swung shut behind them, leaving only the wreckage of the shop and the sound of Emily's uneven breathing. For a moment, no one spoke. The Vampire King turned back to her slowly. The crimson in his eyes faded, but the intensity remained. This is what it means, he said quietly. Emily shook her head, her vision blurring slightly as the weight of everything crashed down on her. No, she whispered. This cannot be my life now. He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. It already is. The mark on her hand pulsed again, brighter than before. And this time, it did not feel like a warning. It felt like something awakening. The mark did not fade. It grew. Emily felt it before she saw it, a deep pulse beneath her skin that did not match her heartbeat. It was slower, stronger, deliberate. She gasped and clutched her hand, her knees threatening to give out as a wave of heat surged through her arm and into her chest. Something is wrong, she whispered, her voice breaking as she looked down. The golden pattern had spread further across her palm, the lines no longer faint but bright, alive, moving as if they were being written in real time. The air around her warped slightly, a subtle distortion that made the edges of the room feel unstable. The Vampire King saw it instantly. His expression shifted from control to sharp focus. It is accelerating, he said under his breath. The man beside him stepped closer, his composure cracking for the first time. That is not possible. It should take hours. It should, the Vampire King replied, his gaze locked on Emily's hand. But it is not. Emily shook her head, panic rising fast now. Make it stop, she said, her voice trembling. You said this was a mark. Marks do not do this. They do not feel like this. Another pulse. Stronger. The light flared, crawling past her wrist now, thin lines extending like roots beneath her skin. She cried out, her body folding slightly as the sensation burned deeper. It was not just pain. It was awareness. Something inside her was waking up, stretching, reaching outward in ways she could not understand. The lights above them flickered again, this time more violently. One bulb shattered with a sharp crack, glass scattering across the floor. A low hum filled the space, barely audible but constant, like something building pressure. Everyone out, the Vampire King said suddenly. His voice carried across the shop, cutting through the chaos. Now. The remaining customers did not hesitate. Fear moved faster than understanding. They rushed toward the exit, stumbling over chairs, leaving everything behind. Within seconds, the shop emptied, leaving only Emily, the Vampire King, and his companions standing in the aftermath. The door slammed shut behind the last person. Silence fell. Heavy. Expectant. Emily's breathing was uneven, her vision blurring at the edges as another wave surged through her. I cannot, she whispered. I cannot do this. The Vampire King stepped closer, this time without hesitation. He reached for her hand. The moment his fingers closed around her wrist, the reaction was immediate. The mark flared bright gold, and a sharp pulse shot through both of them. He stiffened, his jaw tightening as something unseen passed between them. Emily felt it too. Not just the pain. Something else. A presence. Cold and ancient, brushing against her thoughts like a whisper she could not quite hear. She gasped and looked up at him. What is happening to me? For the first time since this began, There was no distance in his gaze. Only clarity. The mark is not just binding you to me, he said quietly. It is opening you. Emily stared at him, confusion cutting through the fear. Opening me to what? He did not answer immediately. His grip on her wrist tightened slightly, not to restrain her, but to steady both of them. To everything my world is, he said at last. The air shifted again, stronger this time. The windows trembled faintly, the glass vibrating as if responding to an unseen force. The man behind him took a step back, his eyes widening. It is spreading beyond her, he said. The signal is getting stronger. Emily shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. Stop saying things like that, she said. You keep talking like I am not even here. Another pulse hit. This one different. Sharper. Clearer. And with it came something new. A sound. Not from the room. Not from outside. From within. A voice. Faint. Distant. But unmistakable. Emily froze. Her breath caught as her eyes widened. Did you hear that? She whispered. The Vampire King's expression darkened instantly. Hear what? She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible now. Someone called your name. Silence followed. Thick and suffocating. The man behind him stiffened. That is not possible, he said. The Vampire King did not look away from Emily. What name? He asked quietly. Emily's lips parted, the word forming before she could stop it. Lucian. The moment the name left her mouth, the mark blazed with a violent surge of light. The windows cracked. The air collapsed inward for a fraction of a second. And somewhere far beyond the walls of that small coffee shop, something ancient felt it and woke up. The name did not fade after she said it. It echoed, not in the room, but inside her. Emily staggered, her vision tilting as if the world itself had shifted out of place. The sound of it lingered in her mind, repeating in a voice that did not belong to her, soft and distant and impossibly old. Lucian. The mark on her hand burned brighter in response, the golden lines spreading further up her wrist, branching like veins of light beneath her skin. She gasped and tried to pull away, but the Vampire King tightened his grip just enough to steady her. His expression had changed completely now. The calm control was gone. In its place was something sharper. Alarm. You should not know that name, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Emily shook her head quickly, panic rising again. I did not. I did not before. It just came out. I heard it, and then I said it. Her words stumbled over each other as she tried to make sense of it. Someone said it. Inside my head. The man behind him stepped forward, his composure cracking further. This is escalating beyond containment, he said. The mark is not just forming. It is communicating. The Vampire King did not look away from Emily. With what? He asked quietly. No one answered. The silence stretched, heavy with implications none of them wanted to speak out loud. Another pulse surged through Emily's body, this one stronger than the rest. Her back arched slightly as the sensation shot through her chest, stealing the air from her lungs. The hum in the room deepened, vibrating through the floor and into her bones. The windows trembled harder now, thin cracks spreading across the glass like spiderwebs. Emily clutched her chest, her breath coming in short, uneven bursts. I cannot breathe, she whispered. The Vampire King moved instantly. One hand came up, not touching her, but hovering close to her shoulder, as if measuring something invisible. His eyes darkened as he focused. It is pulling energy through her, he said, drawing from both sides of the bond. The other man shook his head sharply. That should not be possible without a ritual. It is happening anyway. Emily dropped to one knee, the pressure inside her building to something unbearable. Images flickered at the edge of her vision. Not memories. Not dreams. Something else. A long corridor lit by dim golden light. Stone walls carved with symbols she did not understand. A throne. Empty. Waiting. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block it out. Make it stop, she begged. Please. The Vampire King crouched in front of her, bringing himself level with her gaze. Look at me, he said, his voice firm. She forced her eyes open. His face was closer now, clearer. Grounding. Stay with me, he continued. Do not follow what it is showing you. Her breathing hitched. What is it? She asked. His jaw tightened slightly. A memory, he said. Or something pretending to be one. Another pulse. Stronger. The image snapped into focus for a fraction of a second. The throne was no longer empty. A figure sat upon it. Tall. Still. Watching. Emily gasped and recoiled, her body jerking backward. "There is someone there," she said, her voice shaking violently. "They can see me." The man behind the Vampire King cursed under his breath. If the other side is aware of her, then the bond is already breached. The Vampire King's gaze hardened. "Then we end this before it completes." Emily shook her head weakly. "And what?" she whispered. He did not answer directly. Instead, he reached for her hand again. This time, when his fingers closed around her marked palm, the reaction was immediate and violent. The light flared, surging outward in a brief flash that forced both men to brace themselves. The pressure in the room spiked, then snapped back like a stretched wire released. Emily gasped, air rushing back into her lungs as the overwhelming force receded just enough for her to breathe. The hum faded slightly. The cracks in the windows stopped spreading. For a moment, everything held still. The Vampire King exhaled slowly, his grip steady but controlled. "It is not complete yet," he said. The other man looked toward the door, his expression grim. "But it will be soon. And when it does, every faction will know exactly where she is." Emily's heart pounded as she looked between them, fear settling deeper with every word. "Then what do we do?" she asked. The Vampire King met her gaze, his expression now set with quiet certainty. "We leave," he said. Outside, distant but unmistakable, the sound of engines began to rise. Low, controlled, approaching. And for the first time since this began, Emily realized the danger was no longer just inside her. It was coming for her. The engines did not belong to the city. Emily knew that before she even reached the door. They were too quiet, too smooth, like something expensive and controlled, moving with purpose rather than traffic. The sound grew louder, then stopped all at once. Silence followed, heavy and deliberate. The Vampire King turned his head slightly, listening. His expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted, sharper, more focused. "They are early," the man behind him said, his voice low. "They should not have found us this fast." The Vampire King did not answer immediately. His gaze moved to Emily, steady and assessing. "It is not just them," he said. "It is her." Emily frowned, still struggling to catch her breath. "Who is her?" Before he could answer, the door opened again. Not violently this time. Slowly, controlled. A woman stepped inside. She did not rush. She did not hesitate. She walked forward as if the broken shop, the shattered glass, the lingering tension meant nothing to her. Her presence changed the air instantly. It was not cold like the others. It was precise, sharp, like a blade held just beneath the surface. Emily felt it before she understood it. The mark on her hand reacted. Not with heat this time. With recognition. A pulse that was different from before. Older. More deliberate. The woman stopped a few feet away. Her gaze moved past everything else in the room and landed directly on Emily. "So it is true," she said softly. Her voice carried no surprise. Only confirmation. The Vampire King stepped forward slightly, placing himself between them without looking back. "You should not be here," he said. The woman tilted her head just enough to acknowledge him, but her attention did not leave Emily. "And yet I am," she replied. "Because what she carries belongs to my house as much as it does to yours." Emily's stomach tightened. "I do not belong to anyone," she said, the words coming out before she could stop them. The woman's eyes flickered, amused for the briefest moment. "No," she said calmly. "You do not. That is the problem." The man behind the Vampire King moved closer, tension clear in every line of his body. "Lady Seraphine," he said carefully, "this is not your claim to make." The name hung in the air. Seraphine. It felt important. Dangerous. The woman smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "Every house has a claim when a blood sovereign mark appears," she said. "You know that." The Vampire King's voice dropped, colder now. "Then you also know the law of first bond." Seraphine's gaze shifted to him for the first time. Something sharp passed between them. "Old. Personal. I know the law," she said. "I also know when a bond is unstable." Her eyes returned to Emily. "And this one is breaking rules that have held for centuries." Emily swallowed hard, her fingers tightening against her palm. The mark pulsed again, reacting to the tension in the room. "I do not understand any of this," she said. "And I do not want to be part of it." Seraphine took a single step closer. Not fast, not threatening, but deliberate. "That does not matter," she said. "You already are." The Vampire King moved instantly, blocking her path completely now. You will not come any closer, he said. The air shifted again, heavier, charged. Seraphine stopped, her expression unchanged, but her eyes darkened slightly. You are already too late, she said quietly. Emily's breath caught. Too late for what? Seraphine looked at her, and for the first time, there was something almost like curiosity in her gaze. For the truth, she said. The mark did not choose you by accident. Emily's heart pounded harder. Then why? She asked. Why me? Seraphine's lips curved faintly, but there was no comfort in it. Because you are not what you think you are. Silence fell. Heavy. Final. Emily stared at her, the words echoing in her mind. Not what you think you are. The Vampire King's jaw tightened, his expression hardening in a way Emily had not seen before. That is enough, he said. Seraphine's gaze lingered on Emily a moment longer, then shifted back to him. Is it? She asked softly. Or are you afraid she will remember before you are ready? The mark flared again, brighter than before. And this time, Emily did. Not just feel it. She understood something. Not clearly. Not fully. But enough to know one thing. This was never random. And whatever had chosen her, had been waiting for a very long time. Emily's mind refused to settle. The words echoed too loudly, too clearly, as if they had been waiting beneath the surface of her thoughts long before this moment. Not what you think you are. The mark on her hand pulsed again, slower now, but deeper, each beat sending a strange awareness through her body. It was no longer just pain. It was connection. She felt it stretching outward, beyond the room, beyond the city, like something searching for an anchor. Stop it, she whispered, shaking her head as if she could force the feeling away. All of you need to stop talking like I am some kind of thing. Her voice rose, cracking under the pressure. I am a person. The Vampire King turned slightly toward her, his expression tightening, but before he could speak, Seraphine answered. That is exactly why this is dangerous, she said calmly. Emily looked at her, anger flaring through the fear. Dangerous for who? Seraphine's gaze did not waver. For everyone. The words landed heavier than expected. Not threatening. Not cruel. Just certain. The man behind the Vampire King shifted uneasily. We do not have time for this, he said. The signal is still expanding. Others will arrive. The Vampire King's attention snapped back to him. How long? Minutes, the man replied. Maybe less. Emily's breath hitched. More of them, she said under her breath. The thought alone made her chest tighten again. Seraphine took another step forward, this time stopping just outside the invisible line the Vampire King held. Then we should not waste those minutes, she said. You know what happens if the mark stabilizes without control. The Vampire King's jaw tightened. I will control it. Seraphine's expression shifted slightly, something sharper entering her eyes. You think this is about control, she said quietly. It is not. Emily looked between them, frustration cutting through the fear. Then what is it about? She demanded. No one answered immediately. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Tense. Waited. As if the truth itself was something dangerous to say out loud. Then Seraphine spoke. It is about origin, she said. Emily frowned, confusion deepening. Origin of what? Seraphine's gaze dropped briefly to Emily's hand, where the mark continued to glow beneath her skin. Of that, she said. The Vampire King moved instantly, stepping closer to Emily, his presence shielding her more completely now. You will not say another word, he said. Seraphine did not flinch. You cannot hide it forever, she replied. She is already hearing things she should not be able to hear. Seeing things she should not be able to see. Emily's breath caught. The corridor. The throne. The voice. It all rushed back at once, sharper now, clearer at the edges. What does that mean? She asked, her voice quieter this time. The Vampire King did not look at her. His eyes remained fixed on Seraphine. It means nothing, he said. And it changes nothing. Seraphine's lips curved faintly, but there was no amusement in it. It changes everything, she said. The mark pulsed again. Stronger. Emily gasped as another image flickered through her mind. Not the corridor this time. Something closer. A hand. Pale. Reaching toward her. She stumbled back, her breathing uneven. There is someone else, she whispered. Not you. Not them. Someone else. The room seemed to still at her words. The man behind the Vampire King stiffened. That confirms it, he said quietly. The Vampire King's expression hardened further. Confirms what? The man hesitated, then spoke anyway. The bond is not just between the two of you. Emily's heart dropped. What does that mean? No one answered her directly. Seraphine did. It means, she said slowly, that something else is connected to that mark. Emily shook her head, backing away again, her mind racing. No, that is not possible. The mark flared, almost violently this time. A sharp pulse of energy rippled through the room, rattling the remaining glass and sending a low vibration through the floor. Outside, more engines could be heard now. Closer. Faster. The Vampire King turned his head slightly, listening. Then he looked back at Emily. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but absolute. We are leaving. Now. Emily stared at him, fear and confusion colliding in her chest. You keep saying that, she said. But you still have not told me where. He held her gaze, and for a moment, something almost human flickered beneath the weight of everything else he was. Somewhere they cannot reach you, he said. Behind him, Seraphine's voice cut in softly. There is no such place anymore. The words hung in the air, cold and final. And for the first time, Emily believed it. The engines outside did not stop this time. They multiplied. Emily could hear it clearly now, the low synchronized hum of several vehicles surrounding the block, cutting off every direction at once. Her chest tightened as the realization settled in. They were not just coming. They had already arrived. The Vampire King did not hesitate again. His hand closed around hers, firm and unyielding, and for a brief second the burning mark flared in response. But this time the pain did not overwhelm her. It aligned. Like something inside her recognized the contact and steadied itself. Stay close to me, he said. His voice was calm, but there was no room for argument. Emily swallowed hard and nodded without thinking. Behind them, the man moved quickly toward the back of the shop, scanning for exits that were no longer safe. We have seconds, he said. They are positioning. Seraphine did not move. She stood where she was, watching them with an expression that was no longer amused. It was calculating. Running will not change what she is, she said quietly. The Vampire King did not look at her. It will decide who reaches her first. Emily's pulse spiked. I do not want anyone reaching me, she said, her voice tight. He glanced at her briefly, something softer passing through his expression for just a fraction of a second. I know, he said. Then everything moved at once. The front windows shattered inward as something struck them from the outside. Glass exploded across the floor, the sound sharp and violent. Figures poured in through the broken frame, faster than any human could react. Not one group. Multiple. Different movements. Different presences. Some moved like shadows, silent and precise. Others carried a heavier force, their steps cracking against the floor. Emily stumbled back, instinct taking over as chaos flooded the room again. The Vampire King stepped forward, placing himself directly between her and the incoming threat. His presence expanded, pushing outward like a barrier you could feel without seeing. Do not move, he said again. The first attacker reached them in a blur. This time the clash was immediate. The Vampire King moved faster than before, intercepting the strike mid-motion and redirecting it with brutal precision. The force of it sent a shock wave through the room, knocking over what remained of the furniture. Emily dropped to the ground, covering her head as the air itself seemed to crack under the pressure. Around them, the fight escalated instantly. The man behind the Vampire King engaged another attacker, his movements sharp and controlled, holding the line just enough to keep them from closing in. But there were too many. More figures entered through the broken windows, through the door, through spaces that should not have been accessible. Emily's breathing turned shallow as fear clawed its way up her throat. This was not something she could survive, not something she could even understand. Lucien, she called out without thinking. The name came easier now, familiar in a way that terrified her. For a split second, everything slowed. The Vampire King turned his head just enough to look at her. That single moment was all it took. The mark on her hand surged again, brighter than before, and a wave of energy rippled outward from her position. It was not controlled. It was instinct. The attackers closest to her staggered back as if struck by something invisible. The pressure in the room shifted violently, forcing even the strongest among them to pause. Silence fell for a fraction of a second. Every eye turned to her. Emily froze, her hand still raised slightly, the glowing pattern burning across her skin. I did not mean to, she whispered. No one moved. Then Seraphine spoke, her voice cutting through the tension with quiet certainty. Now you see it. The Vampire King's expression darkened as he stepped back toward Emily, placing himself at her side again. No one touches her, he said, his voice carrying a power that pressed against every wall in the room. The attackers hesitated. Not because they wanted to, because something deeper forced them to. The mark pulsed again, slower this time, but stronger. Controlled. A presence began to settle around Emily, not chaotic like before, but focused. Directed. The man behind them looked at her with something close to disbelief. She is stabilizing, he said. Without training. The Vampire King did not look away from Emily. She is not just stabilizing, he said quietly. She is adapting. Emily's heart pounded as she looked at her hand, then back at him. I do not know how to stop it, she said. His gaze held hers, steady and unshaken even as danger surrounded them. You are not supposed to stop it, he said. The words sent a chill through her. Then what am I supposed to do? For the first time since this began, his answer came without hesitation. Survive it. Outside, more movement gathered. Inside, the attackers began to shift again, preparing to push forward despite what they had just witnessed. And in that moment, Emily understood something with terrifying clarity. This was not a fight she could escape. It was a world she had already entered. The room did not recover from what she had done. It shifted around her, as if reality itself had adjusted to accommodate something it had not expected to exist. Emily could feel it in the air, in the silence that followed the surge of power, in the way every movement around her slowed just enough to acknowledge her presence. She was no longer just the center of the conflict. She was the reason for it. Her hand trembled slightly as the glow from the mark settled into a steady pulse, no longer chaotic, no longer uncontrolled, but alive in a way that made her chest tighten with something deeper than fear. Awareness. What is happening to me? She whispered again. But this time the question felt different. Not denial. Not panic. Something closer to realization. The Vampire King stood beside her, unmoving despite the shifting tension around them. His gaze remained fixed on her, sharp and calculating, but beneath it there was something else now. Recognition. You are remembering, he said quietly. Emily frowned, her breath catching. I have never seen any of this before, she said. None of this is memory. His expression darkened slightly. Not yours, he replied. The words sent a chill through her spine. Before she could respond, Seraphine stepped forward again, slower this time. Her eyes locked on Emily with an intensity that had lost all pretense. Tell me what you saw, she said. Emily hesitated, her instincts pulling in opposite directions. Trust no one, but also answer. Because something inside her needed to. A throne, she said slowly. Stone. Symbols everywhere. And someone sitting on it. The room seemed to tighten around those words. The man behind the Vampire King stiffened visibly. That is not possible, he said under his breath. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. What did the figure look like? She pressed. Emily swallowed hard, her fingers tightening against her palm as the mark pulsed again. The image flickered at the edge of her mind, clearer now, closer. I could not see the face, she said. But they were looking at me. Not through me. At me. Silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. The Vampire King exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening, as if holding something back. That is enough, he said. Seraphine did not back down this time. No, she replied. That is everything. Emily looked between them, confusion rising again. What does that mean? She asked. The man behind the Vampire King spoke before either of them could respond. It means the mark is older than we thought, he said. Much older. The Vampire King's eyes flicked toward him sharply. Careful, he said. But it was too late. The words had already landed. Emily felt it instantly. The mark reacted again, not with pain, but with a deep, resonant pulse that spread through her entire body. The image returned, stronger this time. The throne, the symbols, and now something more. Words. Not spoken, not heard, understood. A phrase formed in her mind. Ancient and heavy with meaning she did not fully grasp. She gasped and stepped back, her voice barely a whisper. It was not just a memory, she said. It was calling me. The Vampire King moved instantly, placing himself directly in front of her again. You will not listen to it, he said. Emily shook her head weakly. I did not choose to, she replied. It chose me. Seraphine's expression shifted again, something darker settling beneath her calm. Then the bond is not what you think it is, she said quietly. The Vampire King's gaze hardened. It is exactly what I think it is. No, Seraphine said. It is something far more dangerous. Emily's heart pounded as she tried to steady her breathing. Can someone just tell me what is going on? She said, her voice breaking again under the weight of everything. The man behind them answered this time, his voice lower than before. The blood sovereign mark is not just a bond between two beings, he said. It is a key. Emily stared at him, her mind struggling to process the words. A key to what? No one answered immediately. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt final, as if the truth itself carried consequences none of them were ready to face. Then the Vampire King spoke. To something that should have remained sealed, he said. The mark pulsed again, stronger than before, and this time the reaction was not contained to Emily alone. The air in the room distorted. The floor beneath them vibrated faintly. Outside, the sound of movement shifted again, not advancing, but waiting, as if something larger had taken control of the moment. Emily felt it deep in her chest. That presence from before. Watching. Waiting. Not for the others. Not for the fight. For her. She looked up slowly, her voice barely audible now. If I am the key, she said, then what am I unlocking? The Vampire King did not answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on her, steady and unyielding despite everything around them. And when he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the air feel colder. That is what we need to make sure never happens. The air in the room did not settle after his words. It tightened, as if the truth he had spoken had weight, and that weight pressed down on everything around them. Emily felt it in her chest, a slow pressure that made each breath feel heavier than the last. She looked at him, her mind racing, trying to hold on to something real, something simple, but nothing about this was simple anymore. You keep saying things like that, she said, her voice unsteady but stronger than before. But you are not telling me what I am supposed to do with it. The Vampire King did not answer right away. His gaze remained fixed on her, as if measuring something deeper than her words. You survive it, he said again. And you stay with me. The certainty in his voice should have felt controlling. Instead, it felt like the only solid thing left in a world that was falling apart. Emily swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the edge of the counter behind her. I do not even know you, she said quietly. His expression shifted slightly, something almost human flickering beneath the weight of everything else he was. You do now, he replied. Before she could respond, the mark flared again. This time it did not burn. It pulled. A deep, internal force that dragged at her awareness, yanking her attention inward whether she wanted it or not. Emily gasped, her body going still as the world around her dimmed. The coffee shop disappeared. The broken glass. The shattered tables. The tension. All of it faded into nothing. She stood somewhere else. The corridor again. Longer this time. The walls stretched endlessly on either side, carved with symbols that seemed to shift when she tried to focus on them. At the end of it, the throne waited. But it was no longer distant. It was closer now. Close enough that she could see the figure more clearly. Not the face. Never the face. But the outline. The posture. The stillness of something that had been waiting for a very long time. You came back, the voice said. It did not echo. It did not carry through the space. It simply existed inside her, clear and undeniable. Emily froze, fear locking her in place. I did not mean to, she whispered. The figure did not move. You always do, the voice replied. The words sent a sharp chill through her chest. I do not know you, she said, her voice trembling. Silence followed. Then something changed. The air shifted, not violently, but with quiet certainty. You did, the voice said. Before they buried it. Emily's breath caught. Buried. The word struck something deep inside her, something she could not reach, but could feel pressing against the edges of her mind. Buried what? She asked. For the first time, the figure moved. Just slightly. A shift forward. Enough to make the distance between them feel smaller. Us, the voice said. The word hit harder than anything else. Emily stumbled back, her heart racing as panic surged through her again. No, she said. That does not make sense. The mark flared again, brighter than ever, and the corridor trembled. Cracks spread across the stone walls, thin lines of light breaking through as if something on the other side was pushing back. They tried to separate it, the voice continued. To divide what cannot be divided. Emily shook her head, backing away again. Stop, she said. I do not understand any of this. The pressure in the space increased. The cracks widened. The light grew stronger. You will, the voice said. When the bond is complete. Emily's chest tightened. What bond? She asked, even though part of her already knew the answer. The figure did not respond this time. Instead, it took another step forward. Closer. Too close. The light surged. The corridor shattered. Emily gasped as the world snapped back into place. The coffee shop rushed in around her again. The noise, the tension, the presence of others crashing back all at once. She staggered forward, her breath uneven, her hand clutching her chest. The Vampire King caught her before she could fall, his grip steady and grounding. Stay with me, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Emily looked up at him, her eyes wide with something deeper than fear now. Understanding. Not complete. Not clear. But enough to change everything. There is someone else, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And they think I belong to them too. Silence followed. The man behind them stiffened. Seraphine's expression darkened. The Vampire King did not move. But something in his gaze shifted. Not surprise. Not disbelief. Something far more dangerous. Recognition. And beneath it, something colder. Possession. No, he said quietly. You do not belong to anyone else. The mark pulsed again, stronger than before. And for the first time, it did not feel like it was choosing between two sides. It felt like it was pulling them together. Everything slowed after that. Not outside, not in the broken remains of the shop, but between them. Emily could still hear the distant movement, the shifting presence beyond the walls, the quiet tension of others waiting, watching, calculating their next move. But right here, in the space where Lucien held her, there was something else. Stillness. His hand remained steady against her arm, not restraining, not forcing, but anchoring her in a way she did not understand until she almost lost it. Her breathing was uneven, her chest rising and falling too fast, her thoughts still tangled with what she had seen. The corridor. The throne. The voice. Us. The word echoed again, softer this time, but deeper. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to push it away, but it did not leave. It settled, like it belonged there. Do not go back there, Lucien said quietly. She opened her eyes again. He was watching her closely, his expression controlled, but there was something beneath it now. Not just power, not just command. Concern. Real. Unhidden. I did not try to, she said, her voice barely steady. It just pulled me. His jaw tightened slightly. Then, you have to resist it. Emily let out a small, breathless laugh that held no humor. I do not even know what it is, she said. How am I supposed to fight something I cannot see? For a moment, he did not answer. His gaze shifted, not away from her, but deeper, as if he was looking at something beneath the surface she could not reach. Because if you do not, he said slowly, it will not just take you. The words settled between them, heavy and final. Emily felt it in her chest, that quiet certainty that this was not a warning. It was truth. She looked down at her hand. The mark was no longer flickering. It had stabilized into something steady and constant, the golden lines glowing softly beneath her skin. It did not hurt anymore. That scared her more than anything. It feels calmer, she whispered. Lucien's expression darkened. That is not a good sign. She looked back up at him. Why? He hesitated. Just for a second. But she saw it. The pause. The calculation. Because it means it is no longer reacting, he said. It is synchronizing. The word sent a chill through her. Synchronizing with what? She did not ask. She already knew the answer would not help. Around them, the tension shifted again. The attackers had not moved closer, but they had not left either. They were waiting. Watching. And now something else had changed. The hostility in the room had dulled, replaced by something more cautious. More aware. As if they had all just realized this was no longer something they could rush. Seraphine stepped forward again, slower this time, her eyes fixed on Emily with an intensity that had lost its earlier sharpness. Now it was something else. Measured. It is settling, she said. The man behind Lucien nodded slightly, his voice low. Too fast. Emily looked between them, frustration rising again. You keep talking like I am not here, she said. Like this is not happening to me. Seraphine's gaze softened, just slightly. Not with kindness. With understanding. It is happening to all of us, she said. But you are the center of it. Emily shook her head, backing slightly into Lucien without realizing it. I do not want to be, she said. His hand moved, resting more firmly against her arm now. Not controlling. Grounding. You do not have a choice, he said quietly. She closed her eyes for a second, her chest tightening again. Then tell me what happens next, she whispered. Lucien did not answer right away. His gaze lifted briefly, scanning the room, the figures, the tension, calculating something she could not follow. Then he looked back at her. And for the first time since this began, there was no hesitation in his voice. We leave before it finishes, he said. Emily frowned. Before what finishes? His eyes held hers, steady and absolute. Before the bond locks. The mark pulsed again. Slower. Deeper. And this time, Emily felt it clearly. Not just in her hand. Not just in her chest. Everywhere. A quiet alignment. A pull that was no longer chaotic, no longer violent. Something that felt inevitable. She looked at him, fear rising again, but mixed now with something else. Something she did not want to name. And if it does, she asked. Lucien did not look away. Then there will be no separating it, he said. The words settled into her, heavy and undeniable. No separating it. The connection. The voice. Him. Everything. Outside, the tension shifted again. Movement. Closer this time. But not attacking. Waiting. As if something had changed the rules. Emily took a slow breath, her fingers tightening slightly against his sleeve without realizing it. Then we should go, she said. Lucien nodded once. Sharp. Decisive. But as he moved, something in the air changed again. Not from outside. From within. The mark flared once more. Not bright. Not violent. But deep. Final. And in that moment, Emily understood something that made her breath catch. It was already too late. The moment settled into silence, but it was not the kind that came from peace. It was the kind that came after something irreversible had already happened. Emily felt it in the steady pulse beneath her skin, in the way the mark no longer burned or surged, but existed. Constant. Complete. She did not need to ask anymore. She already knew. The bond had locked. Her fingers tightened slightly around Lucien's sleeve as she looked down at her hand. The golden pattern was no longer spreading. It had finished. Every line was clear now, intricate and ancient, glowing softly as if it had always been there, waiting to be seen. She took a slow breath, her chest still tight, but no longer collapsing under panic. It is done, she said quietly. Lucien did not answer right away. His gaze remained fixed on her hand, his expression unreadable, but the tension in his posture shifted, not easing, but changing into something more controlled, more resolved. Yes, he said at last. Around them, the room reacted in a way Emily did not expect. The attackers did not move forward. They did not strike. Instead, one by one, they stepped back. Not in fear. In recognition. The man who had spoken earlier lowered his head slightly, not fully, but enough to signal something had changed. The bond is complete, he said. The claim stands. Emily looked up sharply. Claim, she repeated. The word still felt wrong. Still felt like it did not belong to her. But no one argued it. Not even Seraphine. The woman watched her in silence for a moment, then inclined her head just slightly. It is no longer a matter of possession, she said. It is a matter of consequence. Emily swallowed hard. What kind of consequence? Seraphine's gaze did not soften. The kind that reshapes everything. Lucien stepped forward then, his presence shifting again, not defensive this time, but absolute. Then let it, he said. The room went still again. Not with tension, with acceptance. Emily felt it in the air, the way the hostility had vanished, replaced by something heavier, something that carried weight and history and rules she did not understand but could feel pressing around her. She looked at Lucien, searching his face for something she could hold on to. What happens now? She asked. His eyes met hers, steady and unshaken. Now, he said, you come with me. The words should have felt like a demand. Instead, they felt like the only direction left. Emily hesitated for a moment, her thoughts flickering back to everything she had been before this. The small apartment, the early shifts, the life that had felt so ordinary it had almost been invisible. That life was gone, not taken, replaced. She looked down at her hand one last time. The mark pulsed once, slow and certain, as if answering a question she had not spoken out loud. Then she nodded, not because she understood, because she no longer needed to. Lucien's hand moved, not grabbing, not forcing, but guiding as he turned toward the door. The broken glass no longer mattered. The wreckage of the shop no longer mattered. None of it did. As they stepped forward, the others moved aside, clearing a path without a word. No one tried to stop them. No one tried to follow. Outside, the vehicles remained, silent and waiting, but even they felt different now, no longer pressing inward, but holding position as if acknowledging a boundary that had just been drawn. Emily stepped out into the night beside him, the cool air brushing against her skin, grounding her in a way nothing else had. She did not look back. She did not need to. The past was behind her. The future was not something she could see clearly yet, but she could feel it. Vast, unfamiliar, unavoidable. Lucien paused for a brief moment before opening the door to the car waiting at the curb. He looked at her, his expression softer now, but no less certain. "This world will try to take from you," he said quietly. "It always does." Emily held his gaze, her fear still there, but no longer alone. Something else had taken its place. Strength. Not complete, not fully formed, but real. "Then it will have to try harder," she said. A faint shift crossed his expression, something almost like approval. Then he opened the door. Emily stepped inside without hesitation. The door closed behind her with a quiet finality. And as the car pulled away into the night, the mark on her hand glowed once more, steady and unbreakable, no longer a question, no longer a warning, but a truth that would shape everything that came next. Even the coldest kings kneel for kindness.